Hello, everyone. My name is Murilo Quintiliano. I'm an animal scientist and also director of FAI Farms. I'm currently based in Brazil and I support FAI Farms and IQC on the development of our cage-free egg production work, both in Brazil and China. I'm pleased to be here for this again this year. I had the pleasure to be with you guys from the past years as well. And today I'll be sharing with you some of the information and some of the experience we've been having with developing, but also implementing the standards, uh, the cage-free egg standards. So I'll start sharing my screen with you now. Hope you enjoy the presentation. Yes. So ideally today we are going to talk a little bit about the CCFA standards that has been produced in cooperation between FAI, IQC, and now the CCFA members. Uh, and we are going to talk a little bit about the premises of these standards and how it is compared around other similar standards all over the world. So basically, a little bit of background, the CCFA standards was launched in 2021, issued by the China Chain Store and Franchise Association. It was built in cooperation between IQC, FAI, and many other partners uh, that come up with this baseline of what we believe would be a good and practical standard for those who are interested and have a good cage-free egg production. It's also very important to remind that uh, uh, building a standards means that you also need to have the base compliance for each country. So the CCFA standards, it's already comes from the basic requirements of the normative and session provisions according to the Chinese law, like hygienic standard for drinking water, feed hygiene standard, quality management systems, and fundamental terminology, regulations around packaged eggs, environmental quality for livestock and poultry farms, technical specifications for harmless treatments, and technical specifications for HACCP, management of lay hens. So uh, what that means is that from a compliance perspective, the cage-free egg standards already are built up on those basic and critical requirements for a good farming and a good practice around egg production. Uh, the idea here is to demonstrate that the standards produced by the CFA are robust enough and comparable to any other standards or similar standards on cage-free egg production all over the world. So how we this benchmark process works is that first we choose standards. So here on the green table, you can see the list of the most relevant standards that we are benchmarking the CCFA against. So as you see, you have standards from United States, from the UK, Germany, Brazil, Netherlands, the EU alternative system legislation, and many others. Those are the most relevant standards recognized right now. We have variants for Brazil and South America, as we have variants for the US. If you say about certified humane, for example, that are present on those places. Uh, After choosing the standards, we categorized it in key areas. What we, as you see in the middle chart. So you have audit requirements, you have health, space and equipment, antibiotic stewardship, environmental management, and monitoring of working conditions. So as you see, those key areas, they of course they are part of the more detailed categories that the standards are covering, which I'll go on in a minute. And we provided ratings for each of those key areas and the categories underneath it, which means not covered basically is that the standards that we are looking at are not covered, does not cover issues that the CCFA benchmark, CCFA standards covering. It could be higher, meaning that the standards that has been selected has a higher requirement than the CCFA standard. Number two is equivalent, meaning that the selected standard has an equivalent requirement than the CCFA standard, or lower, meaning that the selected standard has a lower requirement on those key areas and underneath categories compared to the CCFA. So it's a very simple, very straightforward process, but of course, as you might imagine, that demands lots of understanding and knowledge underneath it. So FAI team of experts who has been working with cage-free egg productions in many different countries, many different regions with many different standards, was able to simplify or to actually accommodate those requirements into an understandable and interactive table where people can actually navigate and understand and compare details and see where standards are better, where the standards are missing, where the standards are equivalent, and also where it's lower than the CCFA standards. So this interactive table here, as you see, just classifies and make the use of the colors and the ratings that I have just told you. So as you see, gray areas are means that those standards does not cover aspects that the CCFA standards covered, higher, equivalent, and lower. On this table in here, we have the overall percentage of matching scores, which I'll go in a minute. So interestingly, uh, the other benefit of this type of interactive is that you can, of course, select just a part of it. So if you go, for example, on just audit requirements, or if you go on health, or if you go on space and equipment, you can select and actually see a more detailed picture of what it means. So how the CCFA standards are compared to those others. And interestingly, when you hover over these standards, you can see the reasons why it's a higher requirement, it's a lower requirement, or it is an equivalent requirement. So as you see here, it's not mentioned. Uh, 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 and the interesting part of that is you can navigate and you can also start looking for what it means and what you're looking for. Of course, some standards covers a broader range of requirements. So if you go to environmental and management, of course, you can see that there are standards that are more focused or less focused on environmental management. The same with antibiotic stewardship. You have some standards that are giving a higher importance to this. So, for example, EU alternative systems, antibiotic and growth promoters prohibited for those type of practice, meaning that this requirement is higher than the actual CCFA. But another interesting example is that once you go for working conditions, for example, most of the standards that has been analyzed as does not measure or not consider working conditions, meaning that the CCFA standards are covering human and labor rights as well as basic animal welfare, health, and other requirements. On this here, you can see you can also select the basic, the standard itself and highlight it and see how does it looks like. So it's quite interesting that you can navigate and check these standards. Of course, I'm not going to go through every detail. You all have access to this interactive table. You just need to go to this link is www.faifarms.com slash cage-free farms in China. In there, you see you have access to detailed information. You can navigate through the interactive table just as I did in my presentation. And I invite you all to come here and check and navigate, and of course provide us your feedback on this. In conclusion, only 5% of the standards do not cover topics presented at the CCFA standards. So, meaning that the CCFA standards even cover more requirements than 5% of all the other ones, of the 5% of the standards that has been analyzed. We can also see that 10% of the selected standards have a higher requirement, meaning that only 10% of the standards has a requirement that is higher than the CCFA one. We can see that 35% of the standards have lower requirements, and 50% of the standards have equivalent requirements. So this gives us a total, or as an interesting conclusion, that the CCFA standards have requirements equal or superior to 90% of the selected standards. So that means that the the CCFA standards match or is better than 90% of the other standards selected all over the world, giving a very strong baseline for those farmers who want to consider going through the route about cage-free egg production, that he will, if he follow the standards, he will be fulfilling the requirements of the most important certification bodies in the world. As last but not least, I would like to give you three important key messages before I say goodbye. We strongly believe that standardized and safe cage-free egg production is not only a method of production, but also a business opportunity. So we would like to invite everyone in audience to consider going cage-free with a standardized and safe protocol because it will generate and will for certain generates lots of business opportunities. Uh, we strongly believe through those 4 years of interacting with Chinese farmers and everyone that the Chinese producer has the potential to succeed in this market by implementing the right procedures and reporting the outcomes to its clients. So that is very important. It's not just applying the procedures, but also being able to report it back for those clients that are interested in following the best standards in the world. IQC and FAI are very happy to continue help you on this journey. So I would like to invite you to communicate with Chong, and all the IQC team members in China. They are skilled people, very knowledgeable, and they are able to help you to go through this journey on an efficient and profitable way. So I'll end up my presentation here. I hope you have enjoyed, and I hope this presentation brings you some good news and insights on how to start thinking about not only going cage-free, but also going good cage-free egg production, which is needed for safer, healthier, and better quality of life for people, and of course for the animals. Thank you very much. Have a nice conference. Hope you speak soon, very shortly. Bye.